Welcome to a story that can change your life. This is not a history lesson. This is not about cars, machines, or companies. This is a true story about belief, the kind of belief that refuses to die even after failure, rejection, and loss. This is the story of a man who came from nothing, no money, no connections, no support. They told him, "You're just a farm boy. You're wasting your time. No one needs cars. We have horses." But he didn't listen. He didn't stop. He didn't doubt. Because in his heart, one voice whispered, "You were born to build something that will outlive you." And he did. His name was Henry Ford. And because of him, the world started moving. Before him, travel was slow and expensive. Only rich people could dream of owning cars. After him, cars became so cheap and simple that even a worker could own one. He democratized transportation. He changed the way we work, the way we live, the way we move. But this story is not just about what he built. It's about how he built himself from pain, from loneliness, from total failure. And if you stay with this story till the end, you will not only discover how Henry Ford became one of the most powerful men in history, you will also learn how to rebuild yourself with no excuses. And while you listen, you'll also be learning English, real English, story-based English, emotional English. This is the kind of English that sticks in your heart, not in grammar books. So don't just sit back. Open your mind, open your heart, because this is not just a story. This is a transformation. Part 1: The Boy Who Loved Machines, 1863, 1880. Henry Ford was born on the 30th of July 1863 in Greenfield Township, Michigan, USA. It was a quiet, simple village. No factories, no electricity, no noise. Only farms, fields, and family chores. His father, William Ford, was an Irish farmer. His mother, Mary Ford, was warm, strong, and kind. She held the family together. They had 6 children, and Henry was the first son. Their home was small but strong, built with wood, heated with fire, and surrounded by green. From the outside, Henry seemed like a regular farm boy. He woke up early, fed animals, carried water, collected eggs, cut wood, but deep inside, he felt different. He didn't enjoy feeding chickens. He didn't enjoy plowing the land. Why do we have to do everything by hand? Why is life so slow? There must be a better way. These questions didn't go away. They grew stronger every day. One summer afternoon, when Henry was just 12 years old, he saw something that changed his life forever. A farmer nearby had bought a steam-powered machine. It was called a steam engine. It could do in minutes what a man took hours to do. It moved, it hissed, It roared. Metal parts clicked and danced alike. It was magic. Henry was shocked. It was no longer a man working for hours. It was a machine doing it in seconds. He ran toward it, touched it, watched it for hours. He was obsessed. From that moment, one thing was clear. I want to understand machines. I want to build them. I want to change the world with them. Henry started collecting old watches, scrap metal, and broken parts from anywhere he could. By age 15, he had built his own small steam engine model in a shed beside the house. Completely on his own. His hands were dirty, his clothes were torn, but his eyes were full of light. When people saw it work, they were shocked. They said, "He's just a boy. How did he do this?" His father didn't understand. He wanted Henry to become a farmer like every other son. But Henry's heart was clear. He didn't want to grow vegetables. He wanted to grow machines. When Henry was 13, the worst moment of his young life came. His mother, Mary, died. She was his protector, the only person who encouraged his machine dreams. He cried for days, refused to eat. He felt completely alone in a world that didn't understand him. But in that darkness, he remembered her words. "Henry, don't ever stop following that light inside you." And he didn't. At 16 years old, Henry made a choice. He packed his small bag, said goodbye to his family farm, and walked away. He was not running from something, he was running toward something. Toward the city, toward the machines, toward his future. He moved to Detroit, a fast growing city full of factories, workshops, and innovation. In Detroit, Henry worked as an apprentice machinist, fixing engines, oiling machines, and studying every moving part. He worked 10 to 12 hours a day. He earned $2.50 a week. But he didn't care about money. At night, he didn't sleep. He read books about machines. He studied blueprints. He built small parts with his own hands. He didn't go to college. He didn't go to parties. He went to work. That's what built his mind. That's what shaped his destiny. Part 2. The first car, the first failure, and the fire inside. 1880. Detroit in the 1000 was loud. Smoke filled the skies. Factories pumped out metal, sparks, and sweat. Men worked with fire and steel. This was the age of machines, and Henry Ford was exactly where he wanted to be. But while others were fixing machines, Henry was thinking something dangerous. What if I make a machine that moves by itself? At this time, people used horses for everything to carry people, goods, wood, food. If you wanted to travel, you needed a horse. If you were poor, you walked. And Henry looked at the world and thought, this is too slow, too expensive, too limited. He didn't just want to create a car, he wanted to create a new way of life. But in 1885, this idea was laughable. People said if man was meant to move fast, God would have given him wheels, horseless vehicles. That's for the rich, not for workers. Engines are dangerous. They'll explode. But Henry didn't argue, he just started building. Henry worked full time at the Edison Illuminating Company. He was a top engineer, earning a better salary now. But after work, when others went home to rest, Henry went into a tiny shed behind his house and built his dream. He bought parts with his own money: steel, screws, gears, tires, pipes. He worked until 2 or 3 in the morning. His hands were black with oil. His back hurt. His fingers bled. But his eyes were full of light. He called it the quadricycle, a four-wheeled vehicle powered by a small gasoline engine. This car had 4 bicycle wheels, a small ethanol-powered engine, and a steering lever instead of a wheel. It had a simple frame made of metal rods. It could carry 2 people and had no roof, no doors, and no reverse gear. It was not beautiful. It looked more like a motorized baby carriage, but it moved. He tested it in his yard. The engine started. It made a noise. It coughed, and then it began to roll forward. Henry's hands shook. His heart beat faster. Tears came to his eyes. It moves, he whispered. It actually moves. June 4th, 1896. Henry was 32 years old. He and a friend pushed the quadricycle out of the shed, but it was too wide to pass through the door. So what did he do? He grabbed an axe and broke the wall of his shed. That's right. He literally destroyed his own garage to make way for his dream. Once the machine was out, he started it and began his first ride on the streets of Detroit. People stared. Some laughed. ADV kill others, screamed. Dogs barked. Horses panicked. Children ran. But the car kept going 20 miles per hour. It was noisy. It was shaky. But it was history. Henry Ford had built and driven one of America's first gasoline-powered vehicles. Later that year, Henry was invited to a private dinner. Among the guests, Thomas Edison, the most famous inventor in the world. Henry explained his idea: a cheap car that anyone could buy, a vehicle for the common man. Edison slammed the table with excitement. He said, "Young man, that's the thing. Keep at it. Electric cars are too heavy. Your gas-powered car is the future. You've got it." That night, Henry didn't sleep. Edison's words were few. In 1899, Henry raised money from investors and started his first company, the Detroit Automobile Company. Now he had a factory, employees, machines. It looked like success, but the company was a disaster. Why? The cars were too expensive. They broke easily. Production was slow. Henry kept changing designs to make them better, and the investors got angry. After just 18 months, the company shut down. People said, "We told you, he's a dreamer, not a businessman." Henry was humiliated. He had no job, no company, no car. Most people would give up, but Henry Ford was not most people. He didn't quit. He went back to his garage. No investors, no workers, no fancy tools, just him and a burning desire to try again. He studied what went wrong. He simplified the design. He rebuilt the engine. He imagined a new company, one that would build fast, strong, simple cars, not complicated machines. He started working on a new project, the 999, a racing car. To get attention, Henry decided to build the fastest car in America. He designed the 999, a giant red monster with 80 horsepower and no hood, just fire, pipes, and power. In 1901, at a racetrack near Detroit, the 999 destroyed the competition. It beat every car. It became a legend. Suddenly, newspapers started calling him the wizard of the car world. Investors came back, support returned, and Henry Ford was ready. This time, he would not fail. He had a new vision, a new company, and a new plan to build a car that would change the world. Henry Ford had failed once, but instead of crying, complaining, or quitting, he rebuilt himself. And now, with the success of his racing car, the 999, investors were begging to work with him again. But Henry had changed. This time, he had one clear mission. I will not build cars for the rich. I will build cars for the people. On June 16th, 1903, Henry and 11 investors created a new company, the Ford Motor Company. Starting money, $28,000 from investors, not from Henry himself. Headquarters, a rented building on Mack Avenue in Detroit. Employees, just a handful of mechanics and dreamers. Henry was the vice president and the chief engineer. But even though he didn't have full control yet, he had a plan, a massive plan. He was going to create a car that was simple, cheap, and strong enough to survive America's terrible roads. The first car they made was called the Model A. It was a two-seater with a small engine, leather seats, and a price of $850, which was a lot of money back then. It was a success. In the first week, they received over 1,000 orders, but Henry wasn't satisfied. This is just the beginning, he said. I will build something better, something the world has never seen. So he kept improving. He made Model B, Model C, D, E, F, and more. Each car was stronger, faster, and more reliable. But Henry still wasn't happy. Why? Because the price was still too high. In secret, Henry worked day and night on a new idea. He wanted to build a car that would last for years, drive on rough, muddy American roads, be easy to repair, and be affordable even for factory workers. This dream became his obsession. He called together a small team of the smartest minds he could find, including C. Harold Wales, a brilliant engineer, Joseph Galam, a Hungarian immigrant, and a group of mechanics who didn't go to university but knew how to work with their hands. Together, in a small wooden building, they worked in silence. Months passed. They built, they tested, they broke things, they started again, and then, finally, in 1908, they gave birth to something that would change history. In October 1908, the Model T was born. It had a four-cylinder engine, a top speed of 45 miles per hour, 20 miles per gallon. Simple controls anyone could learn, a strong steel body, and most importantly, it cost just $850, a price that would drop much lower later. People laughed at first. They called it Tin Lizzy, an ugly name for a beautiful idea. But the public didn't care. They didn't want fancy. They wanted freedom. And the Model T gave it to them. Orders exploded. People from every corner of America, farmers, teachers, factory workers, small business owners were now able to own a car for the first time. Before this, cars were a luxury. After the Model T, they became a necessity. Within 10 years, more than half the cars in the world were Ford Model Ts. But how did Henry do it? How could he make so many cars so quickly at such a low price? That's where the real magic begins. They invented something that would not only change the auto industry, it would change every factory in the world. They created the moving assembly line. What does that mean? Before this, a group of workers would stand around the car and build it together, piece by piece. It was slow, expensive, and tiring. But Henry flipped the system. Instead of workers moving around the car moved to the workers. Each worker had one job, one small task, one simple action repeated again and again like this. One man attached the wheels, another installed the engine, another did the steering, another added the seat. The car moved along the line, and at the end, it was finished. The result, a car that used to take 12 hours to build now took just 90 minutes. As production became faster, the price of the Model T dropped again and again. From $850 in 1908 to $600 in 1912 to $440 in 1919 and eventually to just $260 by the 1922nd. Henry wasn't just building cars, he was building access. He once said, "I will build a motor car for the great multitude. It will be so low in price that no man making a good salary will be unable to own one. And he kept that promise. In 1914, Henry did something shocking. At a time when most companies paid $2.50 a day, he announced, "From now on, my workers will earn $5 per day, double the average salary." People called him crazy. Other businessmen were furious. But Henry smiled because he knew one thing: if I pay my workers well, they will work harder, stay longer, and even buy the cars they build. And he was right. Ford's factory became a model of discipline, loyalty, and efficiency. Soon, other companies had no choice. They started copying him. Henry Ford didn't just change how people worked, he changed why they worked. Thanks to the Model T, farmers could go to town, women could travel alone, goods could be delivered faster, families could visit relatives far away. America became mobile. The car was no longer a toy for the rich. It was a tool for the future. And in the middle of this revolution, one name stood at the center of it all: Henry Ford. Part 3: The Empire, the Ego, and the Enemies. 1914, 1927. The Model T was everywhere. His factory was the most productive in the world. And the man himself, he was becoming richer than he ever imagined. But something else was happening too. Henry Ford was changing. At this point, his personal wealth had crossed $100 million in today's value. That would be billions. He could buy land. He could build cities. He could hire thousands. But something inside him began to shift. He started believing that he was always right. He stopped listening to advice. He became more stubborn, more private, more controlling. Some said he was just focused. Others said he was becoming arrogant. But no one could deny one thing: he had built an empire, and now he ruled it like a king. In 1917, Ford began building something the world had never seen before: a factory so massive, so complete, so powerful that it didn't just build cars, it created them from raw earth. This was called the River Rouge Complex, built along the Rouge River in Dearborn, Michigan. This single facility had its own steel mill, glass factory, rubber plant, electric power station, railway system, even its own hospital and police. It could take raw iron ore from ships, melt it into steel, form it into parts, build engines, paint bodies, and roll out a complete car at the end. It was the most advanced factory the world had ever seen. Nothing like it had ever been done. Henry didn't just build cars, he built a machine that made machines. But behind the success, something strange was happening. Henry Ford started keeping more secrets. He avoided reporters. He didn't attend big meetings. He stopped dressing fancy. He became very quiet and started writing his own personal newspaper called the Dearborn Independent. In it, he shared his opinions on the world, business, and society. Some of those ideas were controversial and even dangerous. His mind was brilliant, but also complicated. He believed in hard work. He hated bankers and Wall Street. He wanted peace in the world, but sometimes his words sounded bitter, angry, and full of judgment. People began to whisper, is he just a genius? Or is he becoming something darker? Around this time, Henry faced a powerful legal battle. Two of his original investors, John and Horace Dodge, had helped him in the early days. But now they were angry. They believed Ford was keeping too much money for himself. They claimed he wasn't respecting their shares in the company. So they took him to court. The case became public. Newspapers loved it. For months, America watched the courtroom drama. Henry Ford, the working man's hero, versus the Dodge brothers, the bold businessman. Finally, in 1919, the court ruled in favor of the Dodge brothers. Ford had to pay them millions of dollars. But instead of being defeated, Henry did something shocking. He said, fine. If the court says I have to treat my investors fairly, then I'll get rid of my investors. Henry and his son, Ethel Ford, made a bold plan. They would buy every single share of the Ford Motor Company. They would take it completely private. No more stockholders, no more boardrooms, only Henry. In just a few months, they bought out every investor, including the Dodge brothers. The price, over $100 million. But now, the company belonged 100% to the Ford family. Henry was no longer just a car maker. He was the king of his own kingdom. By now, Henry's only son, Edsel, had grown into a smart, soft-spoken man. He was different from his father, gentle, artistic, and modern. Edsel loved elegant car design. He wanted to build faster, more beautiful cars. He wanted the Ford Motor Company to grow globally. Henry, however, didn't agree. He believed in strength, not beauty. He wanted simple cars, not stylish ones. This caused a quiet war between father and son. Henry gave Ethel the title of president, but kept all the control. He allowed Ethel to speak, but rarely listened. It was painful. Ethel respected his father deeply, but he was also growing frustrated. Some insiders said Ethel is the future, but Henry refuses to let go of the past. By the mid 1920 seconds, the world was moving fast. New car companies were rising: Chevrolet, Chrysler, General Motors. They were offering stylish, colorful, advanced vehicles. But Henry refused to change. He still believed the Model T was perfect. He said, any customer can have a car painted any color, so long as it is black. Black was the cheapest, dried fastest, and allowed more production. But customers were bored. They wanted choices, color, style, speed. Sales began to slow down, but Henry didn't care. He still pushed the Model T, the same design, the same engine, the same look. He was no longer building for the future. He was stuck in his own past. In 1927, something unbelievable happened. Henry suddenly walked into the River Rouge factory and shut it all down. He ordered workers to stop production of the Model T. He told them to destroy all the old machinery. Why? Because deep inside, he knew the world has changed and I must change with it. It was the end of an era. More than 15 million Model T cars had been made more than any car before. But now it was over. The car that had made Henry Ford a legend was gone, and something new was coming. Henry and Ethel now worked together on the new project, the Model A. It would be faster, more beautiful, more advanced. But the process wasn't smooth. Henry still argued. He still wanted control. He still doubted modern ideas. But Ethel kept going. And slowly, something began to change, not just in the factory, but in the relationship between father and son. After ending the Model T, Henry and Ethel Ford began working on a new car, the Model A. This time, it wasn't built in a small garage. It wasn't tested quietly. This was America's most watched product. Millions were waiting, and they had high expectations. Style, comfort, speed, color options, and more modern technology. But behind the scenes, it was a battle. Henry still wanted simplicity. Ethel wanted elegance. Henry wanted strength. Ethel wanted beauty. They argued over everything: the engine, the design, even the logo. Henry, now in his mid 60 seconds, refused to give up control. He questioned every change. He delayed decisions. Ethel remained calm, respectful, patient, but those close to them could feel the tension. They were not fighting with fists, said one factory worker. They were fighting with silence. In December 1927, the first Model A was finally released. It came in 4 colors. It had improved safety, better steering, and a stylish design. It cost $385, affordable but modern. The response, explosive. Within the first year, Ford sold over 1 million Model A cars. By the end of 1931, they had sold more than 4 million. The public loved it. America was moving again. And Ethel finally proved he could lead. But behind the success, deeper troubles were growing. As the company grew, Henry created a special team to manage discipline and safety in the factories. This team was led by a man named Harry Bennett, a former boxer hired personally by Henry. But Bennett wasn't just a manager. He built a private army inside Ford. He carried a gun. He used the threats and fear to control workers. He listened to conversations. He followed employees. He punished those who talked back. Some said he ran the factory like a prison. Henry trusted him completely, even as people complained, even as Ethel disagreed. Henry kept Bennet close. This decision would later break the heart of his own son. As the 1930 seconds began, Ethel Ford was president of Ford Motor Company, but everyone knew the real power still sat with his father. Ethel wanted to expand the business globally. He wanted to build luxury cars. He wanted to modernize the company. But Henry blocked many of his ideas. Meetings were cancelled. Designs were rejected. Decisions were reversed overnight. Edo smiled in public. He never raised his voice. But inside, the pressure was building. He worked 12 to 14 hours a day. He traveled constantly. He carried the weight of an empire, but no freedom to lead it. And his health began to suffer. In 1939, World War II began in Europe. Countries were collapsing. Millions were dying. America was watching closely. At first, Henry refused to get involved. He hated war. He believed in peace. He said war was a tool of bankers and corrupt politicians. But as time passed and America joined the war in 1941, everything changed. The U.S. government asked companies to stop making consumer goods and start making war machines. Ford was asked to help. The government wanted planes, tanks, engines, trucks at an unimaginable speed. Henry agreed. But now the challenge was massive. Ford built a new factory called Willow Run near Detroit. Its mission to build the B-24 Liberator bomber planes for the U.S. Army. This wasn't a car. This was a flying machine of war made of thousands of parts, operated by dozens of crew members, and powered by highly complex technology. Most experts said it can't be done, but Henry believed otherwise. Willow Run became the largest aircraft factory in the world, and by 1944, it was producing a new bomber every hour. It was a miracle of American industry. Ford had once put the world on wheels. Now he was putting wings on those wheels. But while the world celebrated at home, the Ford family was facing its greatest pain. Years of pressure had broken Essel's body. He had stomach ulcers. He was exhausted. He was emotionally crushed, constantly overruled by his father and bullied by Harry Bennet. He tried to stay strong for the company. He smiled at meetings. He managed factories. But inside, he was collapsing. In May 1943, at the age of just 49, Ethel Ford died of stomach cancer and complications. The news shocked the nation. People wept. Workers stood in silence. Flags flew at half-mast. But no one cried more than Henry Ford, his only son. His blood, his partner, his hope for the future was gone. Henry blamed himself. He stopped speaking for days. He walked alone in his garden. He stopped shaving, stopped eating, stopped showing up at the office. People said, "The old lion has lost his heart." Part 4. The final years, the farewell, and the lessons he left behind. 1943, 1947. The year was 1943. Henry Ford was 80 years old. His son, Edsel, was gone. His mind was fading, and the war was still raging. The world that Henry once ruled, the world he had built with his own two hands, was now moving faster than him. But even as age, loss, and silence surrounded him, Henry Ford had one final role to play, and that role was letting go. After Essel's death, Henry returned to lead Ford Motor Company. But he was no longer the man who once built cars with fire in his chest. He was forgetful. Meetings confused him. He forgot names, lost track of numbers, and repeated decisions. Privately, people said, "He's a legend, but legends grow old too." The U.S. government, worried about Ford's importance to the war effort, began pressuring the company. Ford was producing tanks, trucks, and airplanes, and it needed leadership that was fast, sharp, and strategic. But the one man who had built the empire could no longer carry it. In 1945, a new man entered the stage. Henry Ford the Cone, grandson of Henry Ford and son of Edsel. He was just 28 years old, recently returned from World War II. He was young, but smart, educated, and hungry. He had seen the mess inside the company. He had seen his father's pain, and now he came with a mission. Save the company, save the name, save the dream. Henry Ford, the old lion, was reluctant at first, but after weeks of discussion and pressure from the US government and the Ford family, he finally agreed. In September 1945, Henry Ford officially stepped down as president. After 42 years of building, leading, ruling, and creating, he walked away from the company that bore his name. After retirement, Henry moved back to his estate, Fair Lane, in Dearborn, Michigan. It was a quiet place, surrounded by trees, birds, and nature. The man who once built the loudest machines in history now spent his days in silence. He walked in his garden. He fed the birds. He sat by the window and read letters. Sometimes workers would see him walking through the old Ford factories, slowly, carefully watching the machines he once gave life to. He didn't speak much. He didn't smile much, but he was present in the place where it all began. At Fair Lane, everything reminded him of the past. The small toolbox he once used as a boy. The chair where Edsel sat with him on summer afternoons. The letters from inventors and the presidents now kept in drawers. The Model T, parked in his garage, untouched, quiet, legendary. But perhaps the loudest silence in the house was the absence of Edsel. Some said Henry never fully forgave himself, that he blamed his pressure, his stubbornness, his pride for pushing Edsel too hard. He never said those words, but he didn't have to. The way he walked, the way he looked out the window, the way he held Edsel's photo in his study, it all said everything. On the night of April 7th, 1947, a massive storm hit Dearborn. Lightning lit up the sky. Rain poured hard. That night, the power went out across the city. In Fairlane, Henry Ford sat by a small candle, no electricity, just firelight the way it was when he was a boy. He sat silently, breathing slowly, his eyes soft. Around 11:40 p.m., Henry Ford passed away in his bed peacefully, calmly, quietly. He was 83 years old. The man who gave the world motion left the world in stillness. His funeral was held in Detroit. Thousands came workers, engineers, businessmen, teachers, presidents, farmers, all stood together, not in silence for a car maker, but in honor of a world maker. They didn't just thank him for his inventions. They thanked him for their lives. The father who got to visit his son because of a car. The mother who could work in a city because she could travel. The student who dreamed bigger because he saw what one man could build. After Henry's death, the company continued under his grandson, Henry Ford II. It modernized, grew, and faced new challenges, but the spirit of the original Ford never disappeared. Today, Ford Motor Company is one of the most recognized companies on earth, with factories in dozens of countries, millions of vehicles, and a name that still means power, progress, and passion. But more than cars, more than money, more than buildings, Henry Ford left behind a mindset, a blueprint for belief. Now, let's talk about what you can learn from his extraordinary life. Here are 12 powerful lessons that can change your future. Dreams start small, but they don't stay small. He started in a farm shed, but because he believed, the world changed. Never underestimate the power of a small beginning. If you can't find a path, build one. There were no car companies, no mentors, so he became his own guide. If the world doesn't give you a way, make one. Work in silence. Let results make the noise. Henry built alone. He failed alone. But when his engine moved, the world listened. Failure is a cost of building something great. His first company failed. His ideas were rejected. But every failure was a step. Built for the people, not for the praise. He didn't make cars for kings. He made them for common people, and that's why they made him unforgettable. Stubbornness can build or destroy. It made him great, but it also cost him his son. Know when to hold on and when to let go. Systems create freedom. His biggest invention wasn't the car, it was the assembly line, a system that made mass progress possible. Pay people well, they will build your dreams. The $5 workday wasn't generosity, it was strategy. When people are respected, they give their best. A strong legacy needs a strong successor. He built an empire but didn't let Ethel lead freely. A lesson for every builder: train and trust the next generation. Silence isn't always peace. In his final years, he had power but no joy. Don't sacrifice relationships to win the world. Time will forget most, but not those who build. Most people die and disappear, but builders, creators, dreamers, they live forever in what they've made. Believe in the unseen, then make it real. At 12 years old, he saw a steam engine and whispered to himself, "One day I'll build something better." And he did. So can you. This was the true, complete, deeply emotional, and fully detailed biography of Henry Ford, told with no rush, no missing moments, and no wasted words. He was not perfect, but he was powerful. And now, so are you. Because you didn't just learn about a man, you learned about possibility. And that is what makes this story the greatest story ever told. A boy from a farm who changed the way the world moves. He failed, he fell, he lost, but he never gave up. If he could build a global legacy with just a dream and his two hands, imagine what you can build. Thank you for staying with us till the end. We hope you learned, felt, inspired, and improved your English along the way. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel for more real, emotional, and powerful stories like this. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep building, and never stop believing. Warm wishes to you and your journey